For many of us, particularly the younger generation, the internet has always been there. It is so intertwined in many of our lives, we sort of just take the privilege for granted. It's not until you go on a road trip or vacation to some remote area do we realize the internet is not everywhere. But that might just change, for the right price of course. In this video, I will break down the advantages of Starlink's satellite internet, describe the hardware used, debate some of the major challenges Starlink faces, and finish with a quick summary of the prices. Starlink is the world's first and largest satellite constellation using a low Earth orbit to deliver broadband internet capable of supporting streaming, online gaming, video calls, and more. Starlink is a constellation of thousands of satellites that orbit the planet much closer to Earth than any alternative and cover the entire globe. The biggest advantage Starlink has, though, is SpaceX.
Now the booster there on screen is flying for the 5th time today. It previously supported NROL 87 and 85, Sarah 1, and a Starlink mission.
Starlink is a subsidiary of SpaceX, and as the world's leading provider of launch services, SpaceX is the only satellite operator with the ability to launch its own satellites on an as-needed basis.
2S10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, engine full power, and liftoff of Starlink 429, go Falcon 9.
They are able to leverage deep experience with both spacecraft and on-orbit operations while taking advantage of cost savings through reusable rockets.
We're about 1 minute away from main engine cutoff, or MECO, if you're following along with the timeline there at the bottom of your screen.
MECO. Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
All right, quick succession there. Next up will be fairing deploy, and there we saw it live.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Separation confirmed. We can now see the Starlink satellites as well as the grid fins on the left-hand side of your screen now being deployed on the first stage.
Most satellite internet services that currently exist, like Viasat and HughesNet, come from a single geostationary satellite that orbits the planet at roughly 35,000 kilometers away. As a result, the round-trip data time between the user and a satellite, also known as latency, is high, making it nearly impossible to support streaming, online gaming, video calls, or other high data rate activities. Because Starlink satellites are in low orbit, latency is significantly lower, around 20 milliseconds versus 600 plus milliseconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
So there we can see the landing burn has begun, rushing through the clouds, and there's the drone ship.
Stage 2
now in view.
FPS has safed. Landing leg deployed.
And there you can see on your
Stage 1 landing
screen,
confirmed.
and heard there with the call out, Falcon 9 has successfully landing, marking the 145th landing of an orbital class rocket, our 45th launch of 2022,
MVAC shutdown.
and our second launch today.
Each Starlink satellite is outfitted with 4 powerful phase arrays, 2 of which are aimed at high-performance nodes on Earth that allow for data communication with the overall internet, and the other 2 are focused on communicating with the region of your Starlink dish. There are also 2 of the commonly used parabolic antennas on each satellite that allow for additional communication. Each phase array is made up of hundreds of antennas, controlled by a small computer aboard the satellite. This computer tells the phased array to shift its transmitter output without moving the antennas themselves. In other words, the angle is adjusted using less energy than if they were forced to mechanically move all of the antennas. By adjusting this angle, the direction of the signal can be oriented to specific regions on Earth where demand is highest. This first iteration of StarLink satellites operate in the Ku and Ka band portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, or 12 to 40 gigahertz. Typically, when operating at a higher radio frequency, with more robust hardware, the larger the volume of information can be sent. This is also known as wider bandwidth. The frequency is also important because a receiver will pick up any signal operating at that frequency, creating interference, which is why we have standardized the use of radio communication for different sectors such as submarines, radio stations, cellular networks, satellite internet, etc. Combine Starlink's median download speed of 90 megabytes per second with the distance the signal needs to travel, and Starlink services allow you to perform most functions quite well. In fact, at these speeds, you can download a 100 gigabyte application in roughly 19 minutes, minus any throughput complications. And the low latency will allow you to run the application with little to no noticeable lag. Second generation satellites could be much more capable, however, and would operate in the V band, which is 57 to 71 gigahertz of communication bandwidth. But this technology is too large for Falcon 9 rockets, which is why Starlink is hopeful they can launch with their newly developed Starship. In the event a satellite needs to avoid space debris, change location slightly, or deorbit at the end of its useful life, an ion propulsion system is built in. Ion thrusters offer an estimated 90% of fuel efficiency by using tiny thrusters over a long period of time.
So the way an ion thruster works is that it utilizes electrical energy to ionize propellant and accelerate it using electric and magnetic fields.
Propulsion occurs by ejecting a small quantity of ionized gas called krypton at very high speeds. The direction of this ionized gas will be based on navigation sensors that track the stars in order to determine its location, altitude, and orientation. To meet energy demands, every satellite is manufactured with a single solar array panel that powers the system. Back on Earth, the Starlink dish that will be placed on the residence or business can withstand extreme cold, heat, hail, sleet, heavy rain, gale force winds, and even rocket engines. For example, the StarLink dish is currently being used to get high-quality video of SpaceX rocket landings at sea, providing continuous coverage in the face of engines capable of generating up to 190,000 pounds of force. At the moment, Starlink is not better than traditional internet services. However, that is if you have access to them. Roughly 90% of the US does have access to DSL and cable internet, but this percentage might be much lower for other countries. The 10% of Americans that did not have access to the internet will now. This population is mostly located in geographically rural areas, which could see an increase in population over the coming years as many workers continue operating in a remote fashion and begin having families. Many of these families will prefer the safer, quieter life in nature as opposed to urban life. New families and retirees will need and want access to a stable internet. Each will have the necessary wealth to pay for such services. There is evidence for the switch to a more rural lifestyle. Over the past few years, RV purchases have increased, suggesting a move towards life away from the big, loud cities and more into nature, mountains, open plains, farms, forests, etc. All of these movers will be accustomed to certain services and products, causing new businesses and institutions to sprout up and grow in rural areas. These business operators will need the internet as well. Businesses such as energy production, hospitals, schools, restaurants, and places of entertainment will purchase this advanced satellite internet because there is no alternative. There are many scenarios where military compounds in remote areas will acquire the internet, and with the military making up the largest proportion of funding in most countries, governments will have no problem paying. Speaking of other countries, right now StarLink is available to almost all of Western Europe, and pending regulatory approval in the near future will be available to India, who has a population of 1.6 billion people. It is fair to conclude that Russia and China, as long as they remain in opposition to Western democracy, will not use American-made technology like satellite internet. But who knows, maybe several decades from now the political landscape will shift and these countries will not mind having access to the internet. It is more likely, however, they will attempt to replicate Starlink's capabilities and launch their own satellite constellation. Africa and South America, which do not have as robust internet infrastructure as most developed nations, could benefit tremendously from low-latency internet that Starlink provides. While no services are being provided to Africa at the moment, Starlink does plan to provide services to the bulk of South America in the next couple years, but this timetable is an estimate and anything could happen. The important point to note is that Starlink sits in a position to expand anywhere in the globe, as demand ratchets up and revenue begins flowing in. Starlink will not face any meaningful competition in the realm of satellite internet because the barriers to entry are extremely high, meaning very few companies can raise the capital and resources necessary to outfit thousands of satellites, shoot them into low Earth orbit, operate them as they live out their useful lives, and offer something Starlink doesn't. Many other companies have announced plans and investments to begin launching their own low Earth orbit constellations, like Amazon's Project Kuiper, OneWeb's plan for 48,000 satellites, and Canadian-based firm Telesat. But unlike Starlink, these companies are in the planning phase and may never actually reach the execution phase for any number of reasons like lost funding, strategic shifts, technical issues, regulatory changes, etc. In fact, Starlink will probably be the only game in town when vying for contracted work around the moon and Mars, as it relates to developing a more productive relay network. Given Starlink is a subsidiary of SpaceX, a privately owned company, we do not have much financial data, such as revenue, units sold, active accounts, profit, expenses, etc. This will change when and if Starlink IPOs, which Musk has hinted at exploring once they realize a positive cash flow. Starlink's VP of Commercial Sales has revealed, however, that they have approximately 700,000 subscribers as of September 2022, up from just 10,000 subs in February 2021. The rates for Starlink services do vary depending on customer classification, which is why I've put together this brief summary of each class. The first two columns are the installation cost, a one-time upfront payment, and the second column is the monthly rate. As you can see in the third column, the traditional and legacy systems are about half the price on average, unless you're paying for a plan that uses high-speed internet as well as mobile. The average price is increasing year over year for traditional services, and the advantage Starlink will have is its robustness in location. No matter where you are on the planet, the idea is you will have access to satellite internet.